Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy. The Secret of the Golden Flower, Part 31, in which I will continue reading The Secret of the Golden Flower. Somebody's making a lot of noise over there. See, I opened the curtain so that, I opened it part way so that it wouldn't be all red. And then this guy started getting sunlight and started making a lot of noise. So I'm going to keep him over here in the shadow. And, the clicking was annoying me. So, hi everybody. It's me, Gwydion. And, there it is. So, welcome. Let's do the incense and the drink, and then we can get to the I Ching, and we can get to the reading. And, for those who are watching all of it, all the petals, I'm going to try to not get too irritated with Carl Jung today, but hopefully not a very big but. Let's bring up the Tree of Life before we get to the other stuff. Where is it? Is it up there? So, the whole masculine-feminine thing. The thing is, I learned to think in those terms. I learned to teach present-day, modern, forward-thinking, woke types and others in these terms. And, when you say, well, this is masculine and this is feminine, you have, a certain type of person who's like, yeah, right, my wife is totally like that. And yes, masculine. All the good stuff is masculine, yes. And so I had students like that, you can imagine. But then I also had students that were like, what? This is totally stereotypical. This is like all the bullshit of history, of our ancestors that needs to be wiped out, that was wiped out, that has been being wiped out since the 70s, since the 60s, since the 20s, Women can vote now, they can think too. And so for them, I was always saying, well, yes, the Tree of Life, the whole Tree of Life exists within every person. And Adam and Eve, let's bring up the Garden of Eden before the fall. So Eve is down here, below, inferior. She's referred to as the inferior mother, as opposed to the superior mother. Tree of Life, please. So the Malkut is the inferior mother, right? And then there's the inferior father, the superior mother, and the superior father. It's like, okay, lower and higher. Before Hitler, superior didn't have such a ring of genocide to it, right? And all of this was before Hitler. Helped to inform his worldview, in fact. No. But yeah, it did. So the point is, as I was like, because shit, every time, as I was looking to see, okay, where did I leave off? Where am I going to start? I saw, Carl Jung talking about, yes, the logos is masculine, and I was like, God damn it, I don't want to do another grouchy episode. I really don't. But Martin Luther and Carl Jung really get on my nerves sometimes, And, it's like, it's not like Martin Luther's a completely other story, but Carl Jung wasn't speaking in a vacuum. These are terms in present day, that are used by fewer and fewer people. In 1930, among the New Age types of 1930, it would have been completely taken for granted, and everybody would have been. It was taken for granted by everybody. Like, well, you know how men are like this and women are like this, and everybody'd say, yeah. Well, some guys are like that. Oh yeah, those guys. Not just those guys, all men. We're taught to suppress certain aspects of our nature in our youth, and women are taught to suppress certain aspects of their nature. It's easier to see when you're looking at older cultures that haven't gone through rapid changes in the last 50 years, 40, 60, 70 years. So World War II, a lot of people don't know this. So just real quick, World War II, a lot of the men, just focusing on America, because I'm American, and Americans generally don't see the world outside of America. I left 7 years ago, so I'm starting to be like, oh, hey, this is here, isn't it? What's my point? The point is, the men went to war. A lot of men went to war. And there was still shit to do at home. And up until then, all those jobs were held by men, right? There were certain jobs, secretary, certain jobs, just phone operator, that women worked in sometimes, typing, but then World War II happened and all the men were gone. So they were like, all right, temporarily, we're going to allow, this is going to be weird. It'll be like a reverse drag show, but we're going to allow the women to have jobs like mechanic and, working at the steel mill and, all these like higher level in all the various hierarchies, right? Then World War II ended and all the men came back. And then it was like, all right, women out, men back to work. Okay, cool, everything's good. And then the women were like, we had a little bit of a taste of something like really quality. And we don't know if we can. And so then, the powers that be, the government, all the various institutions were like, we've got to do something about this. So they started putting out full-on propaganda. Let's play a little one of those old black and white clips of how to be a housewife from the 50s.
Larry, your distinctly masculine outlook on life, and Sue, your feminine way of looking at things.
Although the feverish male is sure nobody else can have his troubles, we know his wife doesn't pass her days just blowing bubbles.
So the reason why the 50s in particular are focused on as a model of, the way things were, it's not that, yeah, it was this way in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, but in the 50s in particular, because it was sandwiched right between World War II, where the women were working in all the jobs, and the 60s, where there was like all the civil rights and women's lib and all this, and the feminist movements and everything got started. There was, an earlier time where there was the right to vote and everything. Carl Jung was around in those days where there's still guys going, it was a mistake, I swear it's a mistake. These past 5 years that women have been allowed to vote, right? But, in the 50s, girls were growing up in elementary school and, early teens being taught the proper place for a woman, the best place for a woman. God wants you, nature wants you, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Sorry to say that. I'm not saying that. I'm sorry to use those words, but that's the kind of words they would use, right? Basically, they wouldn't say barefoot, but they'd say pregnant in the kitchen, right? So, that had the opposite effect. The propaganda had the reverse effect as to what they were hoping, because the knowledge, because then they'd go home and go, Mom? Yes, daughter? Mom, at school today, they made us watch this show. They're teaching us. It's like they want to make sure that we don't, get jobs or amount to anything or even go to college. We're being discouraged from going to college and being told that we need to be beautiful and be, good material for marriage. And the mothers would be like, before you were born, I used to work at the steel mill. What? Yeah, because all the men were at war, and they needed us. And then the men came back, and they told us to fucking go home and have kids. That's fucked up. I know, but don't tell Dad. Don't bring this up in front of Dad, right? And so these 13, 14-year-old girls grew up to be the hippies marching on Washington. It's like math. Like we can look back and see, oh, that's how that happened. So that's the 50s. That's why that black and white anti-feminist period happened. Which kind of gives one hope about the kind of the anti-woke thing today, that maybe that's the equivalent of the 50s, and the 2030s are going to be the cultural revolution finally. Not in the Chinese sense, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so yeah, Carl's already getting on my nerves, and I haven't even started reading it yet. So, but this thing, so yeah, it's masculine on top, feminine on bottom, but then there's this cop-out where this is beyond gender. Kether is above masculine and feminine. It transcends gender, and these days people like to hear a phrase like transcends gender. They're like, go on. And they say, well, the flaming sword, it does the zigzaggy, it goes to Hakma and Binah, just because the sperm first, then the egg, right? I mean, the sperm, and then the egg. The man comes first. I mean, obviously, but there's paths here too. So it's like equal. And people are like, okay, go on. Yeah, so this whole thing generally is masculine. What? Why? Well, then this is feminine, and then this is masculine and feminine. It's all equal. There's father, then there's, underneath father is mother, and then there's son, and underneath son is daughter. And it's like, isn't that like that Fiddler on the Roof song, Tradition? Who must find a way to make a proper home. Wait, why am I doing the father voice when I'm singing the mother's lines? I don't know. It's, it's the 90s, right? So, left brain, right brain. I was thinking that to help as a salve, that when Carl Jung says masculine, we could replace that with left-brained, which is also a dated term that is basically meaningless from a neurological standpoint, but it's still kind of a shorthand for like the rational, side, if you will. Things are a lot more intermixed than, something so cut and dry. But there are certain functions that are controlled by the different hemispheres, but it's not like as simple as like art and subconscious is over here, and math and reason is over here. So Carl Jung, he's like, well, since logos is about reason, then I agree that it's masculine, because men are have the reason, and the women are all hysterical, freaking out back at home. That's Carl Jung. I mean, everybody kisses his ass. Not everybody. But part of why I feel the need to criticize Carl Jung is because so many people kiss his ass, blow smoke up his ass. They do all kinds of things with his ass. Some of them I don't even want to mention. And I talk about all kinds of things on here. So, anyway. So we're going to do our best. We're gonna just move through it. I'm gonna try not to stop again and again and again to talk about how inherently sexist perhaps the Chinese philosophy that they're talking about is, which is probably true. There's like semen is a cure for everything, and vaginal secretions are poison, and it's like who came up with that and why? Never mind. I already know the answer. It was men and blowjobs. Those are the two answers to those. And they don't like to. They haven't read the Kama Sutra, or at least that type of Chinese medicine. It needs a little bit of. Well, no, the Kama Sutra is also. I haven't read it, but I've heard that it's very, very, very patriarchally, There's nothing in history that is free from the ire and disgust of a person in favor of progress in present day. So this is challenging. It's a challenge, which I think I took this on because it was a challenge. This whole project of reading older books, trying to sift through the baby in order to find the bathwater, or something like that. It is a challenge. You know, and I mean, it's like me in the past, outside of chicken philosophy, with some exceptions, like learning Golden Dawn is like begrudgingly like, okay, masculine, feminine. So active, the right side, that's, I guess, masculine, and then feminine is the left side. It's receptive, you receive with your left and project with your right, masculine, feminine, and you sort of get used to thinking in those terms, and then try to say, well, but women have right hands too. So masculine and feminine exist within both. Eve exists within men and women. Adam exists within men and women. And someone will be like, yeah, but women are more, heavily Eve, and men are more heavily Adam. And I'd be like, no, Adam is the Ruach, Eve is the Nefesh. Everybody has a Ruach and a Nefesh, So, I can try to explain it, try to fit it into our present day thinking, or reject it entirely because it's incompatible with our present day thinking. Today, I'm going to try to ignore those parts. I've talked enough at the beginning of this episode that you'll know when you hear it what I'm thinking when I read it. And so hopefully by getting all this out at the beginning, then it'll help make the reading go more smoothly today. There was other stuff I wanted to say, but I'm not going to sit here and try to remember it. Let's switch up the music. All right. Let's get to the fun stuff. So, because I always do incense, and because all the incense is in the hall, and because I forgot the incense, I looked around the room here, and I found this little tiny incense. It says raindrops. Now, obviously, raindrops is not a scent. I mean, kind of, but I doubt they were able to take that. Oh, there's some chemical. Humans have the ability to smell like 1 parts in a million or something. We're way more attuned to this particular chemical that goes into the air. Chemical as in, just a molecule, not like something. People say chemical, you think of like white, suited, white jacket, laboratory type test tube. That's chemicals too, but so's this stuff and everything else. What's the point? We can smell rain hitting the ground. When rain hits the ground, there's a specific smell that comes. And you can smell the rain before you hear it or see it. You've had this experience? That is because of evolution. Because at some point in the past, perhaps, there were people, hominids, something, that did not have that ability. And they died off because they couldn't smell when the rain was coming. Perhaps also there were people who couldn't understand the difference between and and they didn't know when there was danger and when the dog was just playing and when it was playing with another dog, or when the wolves were there. They couldn't decipher the difference, and they died off. And the humans that remain today can understand dog barks. Evolution, right? So anyway, this raindrops smells to me like, I don't know, incense. It smells like some kind of flower. It smells like jasmine. No, not like jasmine. A little bit. Anyway, that's the incense. And the beverage, just to keep it interesting, Jameson's ginger ale. It was in the refrigerator for an unknown number of days, open, and there's this much left. But I didn't want to bore you with this coffee. It's coffee again. It's coffee. Some coffee. It's coffee, so here we go. Cheers. That tastes like flat ginger ale with just a hint of the smell of everything else in the refrigerator. Ooh. Ooh. Seems like a metaphor for... next, we're going to do the I Ching. All right, I Ching. Help us. Help. We need help. So let's just do a simple cut. And I've gotten this one before. Oh, no, I haven't. I haven't gotten this one before. It's sextuple broken. And it's earth on the bottom, earth on the top. The one we got before was sextuple solid. So, Editor Edward, if you would please turn up the music, and I will look up that hexagram. Kun, or K''UN, Kun, the receptive. Weren't we just talking about that? Bear with things as the earth bears with us, by yielding, by accepting, by nourishing. All right. Very interesting. Very, very interesting in the context of everything that I've been saying so far in this episode. All right. So hopefully it's just the first few lines. You've already heard everything that I said. So I'll try not to belabor the point any further than I already have. Editor Edward, would you change up the music? Here we go. Although Wilhelm's translation of Hun as animus seems justified to me, to be clear, seems justified to Carl Jung, but not to me, to Gwydion. It seems worth going on and on and on and on and on and on about how not justified it is. Although, maybe he's right. Again, maybe it's perfectly in alignment. Carl Jung's sexism is in alignment with the sexism in Taoist alchemy. Nonetheless, I had important reasons for choosing logos for a man's spirit. For masculine clarity of consciousness and reason, rather than the otherwise appropriate expression animus. Okay. Chinese philosophers are spared certain difficulties which burden Western psychologists, because Chinese philosophy, like all mental and spiritual activity of ancient times, is exclusively a constituent of the masculine world. Its concepts are never taken psychologically, and have therefore never been examined as to how far they also apply to the feminine psyche. Okay, all right. That's fair. A lot of things are developed within patriarchal cultures by men, for men. And in the modern world of 1930, Carl Jung, many of his patients are women, and he's trying to see how any of this can apply or not apply. Some of it is incompatible, generally speaking, although many men are more compatible with quote-unquote feminine things, and many women are more compatible with masculine things. But dealing with the normatives normative is no longer a good word, right? It might apply to 85, maybe even 95% of everybody, but because of the 5% or the 15%, whatever the percentage is of people who fall outside of these clear-cut definitions, then it's problematic to use them. So we try to find ways to dance around, avoid using them, or just stop talking. Just go to work. Just sit and stare with that 1,000-yard stare at the rush hour traffic in front of you. Just turn up the radio, blast the thoughts out of your brain. No, let's not do that. Let's keep reading. Right, here we go. But the psychologist cannot possibly ignore the existence of woman and her special psychology. Okay. All right, so Carl Jung is in a place in 1930 in Switzerland where things are less male-dominated than they were in the 16 and 1700s in China. So all this talk about keep your seed, don't release your seed, oh, put your seed up in your third eye. Like, how does this apply to women? You know, like right? You know, like, okay. But the cycle, The reasons I prefer to translate Hun as it appears in man by logos are connected with this fact. Okay. And it's interesting of course there's logos. Editor Edward, could you give us a rundown of like the different centuries and cultures and implications of the word logos real quick?
Logos, the ancient Greek word meaning word, discourse, or reason, related to lego, meaning I say. It is cognate with the Latin word which means law, and it became a technical term in Western philosophy beginning with Heraclitus, who used the term for a principle of order and knowledge. The Sophists used the term to mean discourse. Aristotle used it to mean reasoned discourse. The Pyrrhonist philosophers used the term to refer to dogmatic accounts of non-evident matters. The Stoics spoke of the logos spermatikos, the generative principle of the universe, which foreshadows related concepts in Neoplatonism. Within Hellenistic Judaism, according to Philo, he was a historian and lived from about 20 to about 50, 20 BC to 50 BCE, 20 BCE to 50 CE, or BC and AD if you're kinky. He distinguished between the logos prophorikos, the utterer, word, or speaker, the logos spermatikos, the speech, and the logos endiathetos, the word remaining within. In the Gospel of John, the New Testament of the Bible, it identifies the Christian logos through which all things are made, and further identifies Jesus Christ as the incarnate logos.
Thank you, Editor Edward. So, all of that having been said, whatever it was, no, I have a general vague idea, but Editor Edward's in front of a computer, so he can get more specific. Jesus, there's the Church of the Hermaphroditic Jesus, which is a whole other ballgame. But, he was the son, not the daughter. Not saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying that's the way it's written, right? And he is the Logos. Jesus, Joshua, Logos, the Word made flesh, Son of the Father, made in the image of the Father, Father, penis, Son, penis, right? Mother, well, if you ask Martin Luther, she's a nice lady, but don't give her too much attention, right? So he kind of made a bad situation worse, at least the Catholics were. praying the rosary. Still are. He didn't eliminate them. He just created a space where they weren't. And now, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing that happened where, this is fun. I've gotten to explain the history of Christendom, the history of Christianity to my wife, Piyu, and she's been helping me understand India, obviously, these past 7 years. But, so you had a situation where there was a whole world, not a whole world, the world that had been introduced to Christianity and had churches, and that church was organized, right? And then these fuckers right over here started going, let's worship the goddamn Pope. And everybody else was like, that's stupid. And these people were like, you're excommunicated. And they were like, no, you're excommunicated, you little puny brat. And then the little puny brat, with the power of autocracy, with that old Roman fucking, what's his name? You know what I mean? The Caesar thing. Over time, and through Spain and Portugal, they conquered the world. Then the world got bigger, and this thing here got smaller, and this, the Americas were completely Roman Catholic. So this tiny little puny thing here had laid claim to all of this and a lot of Asia and, the Philippines and all this other stuff was now Roman Catholic. So the puny little brat among the Christians conquered this vast amount of land, right? Then an even punier little brat, England, was like, the itty-izzard thing. The king was like, I want to kill my wives. And the Pope was like, hey, that's not nice. And he was like, yeah, well, fuck you. Martin Luther last week, was it last week? Said, fuck you. And so do I. And I've got part of the ocean in between us. And everybody here does what I say. So you know what? We're not Roman Catholic anymore. We're going to be Protestant. Ha! Now that that's a thing, as of yesterday, right? And then they were like, well, shit, they've got Spain, and Spain has all the boats, and then some dumb thing happened where the whole Spanish Armada was in one place, and the British were like, hey, is that the whole Spanish Armada? And they're like, yeah, huh. Well, let's take care of what we're on our way to go do. But if they're still there when we're on our way back, let's sink the entire thing. And they're like, yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, they're really vulnerable in that little cul-de-sac or whatever the fuck, And then they came back in 1588. They were like, let's destroy the entire Spanish Armada. And then the British were the last ones standing, sort of like America after World War II. Sense a pattern here. So then the British took over the world, right? The whole fucking world, basically, except for a few places. Right? What are we talking about? I don't know. Somehow it related to what Carl Jung was saying. Fuck. I'm sorry. And then there was World War II, and then the Americans took the top spot, the top Roman spot. Yeah. Logos. Logos, masculine, Jesus, feminine, penis. I have no idea. I'm sorry, guys. That really got derailed, didn't it? It was a long tangent that I think was supposed to arrive somewhere, but it never did. We'll see. Maybe it'll come back. All right. Anyway, yes. Wilhelm, in his translation, uses logos for the Chinese concept Hsing, which could also be translated as essence, bracket parentheses, of human nature, end bracket parentheses, or creative consciousness. After death, Hun becomes Shen, spirit, which is very close, in the psychological sense, to Hsing. Psychological Hsing, band name for the day. Since the Chinese concepts are not logical in our sense, but are intuitive ideas, their meaning can only be fathomed through the ways in which they are used, and by noting the constitution of the written characters, or further by such relationships as that of Hun to Shen. Hun, then, would be the discriminating light of consciousness and of reason in man, originally coming from the logos spermatikos of Hsing. Editor Edward, could you give us a little bit of insight on this spermatikos?
The Stoics spoke of the logos Spermatikos, the generative principle of the universe, which foreshadows related concepts in Neoplatonism.
Thank you, Editor Edward. Comes from the root word sperm and tickle, right? Sperm tickle. We call it something else now. Anyway, and returning after death through Shen to the Tao. For this use, the expression logos ought to be especially appropriate since it includes the idea of a universal being. And you said you're not a monist to that guy in your head that time. And therefore, it wasn't Satan accused Carl Jung of being a monist instead of a real Christian. He was like, no, I'm not a monist, Satan. If that sounds interesting and unfamiliar, then check out Carl Jung's Black Books. It's the main series, you might say, on chicken philosophy. It's the original series. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to do the Arbatel just as a weird side project. This is the Arbatel. Check that out. Nobody watches the Arbatel. Anyway, the Arbatel was how I gradually got comfortable with talking about God and stuff in public on chicken philosophy. Anyway, and then Meccan Revelation, because that whole thing happened with Gaza, and I was like seeing a lot of people on my friends list going, oh, that's because Muslims are like this, and then walking around in India, they're like, Muslims are like this, and I'm like, I think I need to read some Ibn Arabi. I'll just stay silent when these people talk shit, because I don't want to get kicked out of the country. Make a scene. But I'm gonna read some Sufism and talk about how interesting it is. That was Meccan Revelation, and then I was like, I want to read Teilhard de Chardin. I've always wanted to read Teilhard de Chardin. And then we read Ashtavakra Gita somewhere in there, and then we decided to read Martin Luther. And then Gwydion, in protest, added Secret of the Golden Flower because he wanted to talk about something that wasn't so Abrahamic. And here we are. All right. Since the Chinese concepts, Hun then would be discriminating. No, for this use, the expression logos, no. Universal being, and therefore covers the fact that man's clarity of consciousness and capacity for reason are universal rather than something individually unique. If it's universal, then you're using the gender neutral. Why not say mankind? Human reason, right? Logos. No, you said it was masculine at the beginning of the paragraph. It's a long paragraph. It's a 30-minute paragraph today. It's like when someone gives you a sandwich and you're like, I know I can taste one or two ingredients in here that I like, but you put this in it and you fucking ruined it. That's how I feel about Carl Jung. I like certain things he said, and they're familiar because they've kind of formed the basis of my own paradigm and way that I view the world. I think that the processes of distillation and whatnot had already been done by my parents, or at least my mom. My dad was much more of a, women! Which, hence, my reactive buttons being pushed by it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, me. Alright, I'll try not to keep pushing my own reactive buttons with the Carl Jung. Ow! I'm mad! Like that. Sorry. Therefore, it covers the man's clarity. Right. Moreover, it is not personal, but in the deepest sense impersonal, and thus in sharp contrast to the anima. I don't know, Carl. I've read your conversations with your anima, and if she's the feminine one and you're the masculine one, I don't know. You're mostly like whiny, and she mostly is making sense. So you just look at it. Meditate on that one, Carl. I'd say. That'd be funny if, like, after this life, and you get the download of all the past 100,000 lifetimes to kind of like, oh, I was Carl? Oh, shit, I spent all that time yelling at myself. No, I don't know. And not knowing is the half-empty battle. G.I. Joe. And thus, in sharp contrast to the anima, which... That's not which, like... It's, is a personal demon expressing itself in thoroughly personal moods. Parentheses, therefore, animosity. End parentheses. So, anima and animus. Anima, which comes from the Greek word animus, is a root of animosity because of the connection with animus, which relates to like anger and being... Never mind that. It's Carl with his people using root words to justify their stereotypes. Lovely. Isn't it lovely? Okay. We did our best. We tried. And perhaps failed. I can accept that. But next time it's going to be BT reading some Islamic mysticism. And surely that will be free from anything that could possibly push our buttons. And I'm sorry, guys. I'll work on it. It's that whole thing. Like in Golden Dawn, they teach you that by allowing evil to exist unchecked, you make yourself an accomplice of evil. So I really strongly feel that if I were to read this without stopping to point out the evil when it comes up, which is in every sentence at times, same with the Martin Luther, then I would be an accomplice of evil. I'm not here to read and perpetuate the bullshit that came out of Carl Jung or Martin Luther's mouth or through their hand, through a pen. I'm here to find the parts that are useful, put them in a pile, and then throw away the rest and offer that pile to myself, to the world if it wants it, but to show the process that it underwent. Because I think what happens is a lot of people cherry pick. I think the reason why people kiss Carl Jung's ass is either they don't care about the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes, which is, probably in half the cases, they don't care. Or they choose to ignore or just shrug it off and say, well, yeah, it was a long time ago, so we just have to kind of ignore those parts. But they cherry pick, like, this is an interesting idea, and let's dress it up a bit, put some lipstick on that pig, Is that a problematic expression? Probably. And then present it in a meme. Look, Carl Jung said this. Oh, well, it must be good because it's Carl Jung, and he's only said memes that are good and interesting and insightful. And my friend, who's really smart and into stuff, but isn't too much of a weirdo, also likes Carl Jung. So he must be worthy of blowing smoke up his ass. That's generally, I think, what the people who repost Carl Jung memes are thinking, right? Yeah, and it's a deep study, and you can spend your whole life studying it and all this. Same with being a Lutheran. What's my point? I don't think I have one. I don't know. I might have had one. Today is a day for not arriving at the point, for going on long tangents, and for self-exploration about the nature of the buttons. Are they buttons? Should I be apologizing, or am I doing the very thing that I set out to do by emphasizing, overemphasizing, analyzing, and overanalyzing the aspects of these books that I find distasteful? I don't know. Doesn't matter too much. Not really. So, all right. Hopefully next one will be better. Until then.